Hi, everybody.
Hello. Happy Tuesday if you're watching this live.
And if you're not happy next Tuesday or whenever you have a Tuesday, we're happy for you.
We love Tuesdays, actually. That's really what it is.
Mostly for the tacos. So, well, Madeline, do you want to get us started or introductions?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Madeline McMahon. I am a fractional marketing strategist. And whenever I can, I work with small breweries and small businesses to help them better navigate marketing strategy in the do-it-yourself stage of business. John, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Szymankiewicz. I'm an attorney, and I work almost exclusively with breweries, wineries, and distilleries. So full-time attorney, part-time pain in the ass. So hopefully today will be interesting and educational for all of us. Madeline's got way more experience with AI than I do, and hopefully she can kind of keep us on the straight and narrow as we go through kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Well, and we've got a little disclaimer for you as we introduce our presentation. And again, our topic today is AI on tap, smarter marketing and legal tools for breweries. So if we can get that slide up. Disclaimer in that anything we talk about is somewhat subject to change in that AI space. And also that John and I have only practiced this a handful of times, and we do not know what AI is going to populate during this demonstration. So thank you for your patience and for any energy that you bring with us in this journey. But we do want to make sure that we shout out that and anything in this AI space is really subject to change. And then, John, any other legal disclaimers before we get started?
Yeah, none of this is actual legal advice. So, and I am not your attorney unless we have a separate contractual agreement. But no, Madeline, you're spot on. Everybody knows this is changing so fast. Even just the quality of AI tools, 60, 90 days ago are substantially different. So take it also with a grain of salt because, Madeline, as you said, I think offline, if you have a particular ChatGPT or AI profile, it's also learning from you. So what Madeline may get may be different than what John would get, and what might be different than what you would get, because we're all doing more or less different things that it's learning from as well.
Absolutely. And before we jump into the demonstration, just a shout out on why we're using the tools we are today. Whenever I volunteer my time to give presentations on how to leverage AI, I always joke that my dad, who is a chief technology officer, was paying for ChatGPT when AI first became a little more popular in day-to-day business. And I figured if my IT dad trusted ChatGPT, then I could use that one. So I've been using ChatGPT probably closer to 2 years now than a year and a half. And it's just become my preferred tool in that reason. It does not mean that it's better than other options out there. My pro tip when it comes to using an AI tool is find the one that you enjoy using and works for your systems. Don't worry about having the best new AI that's available. But we are going to use a couple of different AI tools to help show you guys some examples. So we're going to get to the good stuff. Let's jump right in, John. We did introduce ourselves. I've got a slide here that just reminds you, again, you've got John and Madeline here. Hello. And I actually put the date on there just as like a backup, just so we remember that this is live. So we're going to start by something that we think all breweries kind of have in common. All breweries and all small fermented beverage businesses or businesses of any size typically need an employee handbook and things like standard operating procedures. So we thought we could find some camaraderie in asking ChatGPT to create an employee handbook for a brewery. Now, I have been using ChatGPT for a very long time. This is a fresh, brand new account. I actually have not even generated any prompts in it. So we're just going to see what AI comes up with in asking us to generate an employee handbook. Now, a quick note with this as well. I did create an account. People often ask me about needing a free version or a paid version. I do encourage people to at least sign up because then you fall under the user agreements. And I don't know if you have any other notes about that, John, but we're going to take a look now. And then our objective is the reason John is gracing us with his very valuable time is he's going to help us kind of take a look at things we should be looking out for. I'm sure you all have heard at this point, AI may hallucinate, right? It wants to give you what you're looking for. So it's important to kind of discern when it's operating and helping you, and when it's at a place ready for expert eyes to give it a more formal review. So we didn't give it any information about us, so we'd have to go in and edit our name, obviously. It starts us with a basic table of contents. It's got an effective date and a version. And starts us with a mission statement. I'm going to pause here and give John a second to notice, does it matter at all that we haven't talked about what state our brewery is in, or are we missing anything right off the gate in introducing an employee handbook in your space?
Well, if you'll scroll back up to the table of contents, right? So this is a great place to start because, and this is quite frankly why I'm interested in this, is because, an employee handbook is a great example of something that, every brewery, tap room, et cetera, out there, you probably ought to have this. If you've got more than 2 employees, you need to have an employee handbook, but it's also one of those things that easily falls off the radar, right? Oh, I'll get to that later. It's extra work. And I'm more worried about scheduling employees, or I've got to, brew this batch to get on for this weekend. It's one of those things that tends to fall off or get procrastinated and pushed off. And then somebody goes, oh, wait, I don't have to hire a lawyer for this. I can get ChatGPT or AI to draft this for me. So it's a great example of, okay, here's one of those situations where I can use this tool and hopefully do it faster or cheaper or without, professional expertise. So this is a great example and why we kind of chose this one, although you could use the same theory with, putting together a marketing plan or an employment agreement or a lease. I mean, you could do it with all kinds of different things. We just, kind of chose to work with this. And as Madeline said, this is the first time we're ever seeing this, right? So this is brand new, fresh content. So as I look at this table of contents, Madeline, you teed up a great softball. Is what about the state? Yes, that matters, right? So without reading the rest of this, the first thing that goes into pops into my head is, okay, is the AI giving us, does it know where we are? Or is it giving us general guidelines based on federal law? Or is it giving us general guidelines based on something else it found? But, looking at this table of contents, an introduction, yeah, that's probably important. A mission and vision and values, yeah, also important. Employment policies, okay. Now that's the one I want to dig into in a little bit when I start asking questions about things like, what about discrimination? What about sexual harassment? What about drug use? What about these things that are very, very specific? Workplace conduct, always a good thing. What are the details in that you're going to probably want to adjust for your specific brewery? Same thing with like attendance and scheduling. Some state laws have different requirements for part-time versus full-time versus scheduled breaks and that sort of stuff. I am thrilled that it actually has an alcohol policy in here, that it called that out, health, safety, and alcohol. If you don't have an alcohol policy, you're making a mistake. And, this would be a great example of brewery operation standards. Some of these look like really good, high level, what we should be looking at. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this table of contents. Madeline, you asked, is the state an issue? Yes, the state's going to be an issue. And then we ought to probably drill down at some point on, okay, what about your particular brewery? What about your particular business? And that's one that, AI, as Madeline said, doesn't know, right? So one of the examples I'm always going to throw out there that's specific to breweries or tap rooms, as an alcohol policy, there's the, hey, don't come to work drunk. But then there's also, what's your policy about sampling during the day, right? A customer says there's something wrong with this beer. All right, your taproom manager probably has to try that and go, oh yeah, this is wrong. Let me comp you a beer. Here in North Carolina, we've got very strict rules about employees and when they can even sample on the job, right? So there are those kind of regulatory things that aren't employment based, but are ABC sort of stuff. But then the other one, I don't know too many people that have their shift beer policy documented. That's alcohol too, right? And somewhere in here, this is one that I don't think that, maybe they will drill down into it in some of these. but in our changing environment of THC and cannabis, how does that fit? Do you differentiate between what you allow in the retail in the tap room versus in the brew house, right? Because the brew house, that's a federally regulated space where any amount of cannabis that's more than 0.3% delta 9 THC by dry weight is a Schedule 1 substance. That's like having a kilo of Coke in your brewery. So those things are really different that I don't know if it's drilling down on. So yeah, this is a great list. Madeline, do you want to just kind of scroll through this stuff, or where do you want to go?
Why don't we actually, I'm going to iterate this a little bit because we do want to show you multiple tools and how to get closer to the answers you're looking for without helping the AI hallucinate. So I'm going to use that shift beer as an example, and then I'm going to put a prompt in. So say, for example, the shift beer is something that you allow as a business owner, but may not directly align with the way a law is worded. You need to be mindful about what context you give it without explanation, because John, what would happen if this handbook is signed by both the employee and the employer? Does this become a tool in future conversations as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the whole point of an employee handbook is that it sets up the expectations for both sides, right? It's what an employee can hold the employer to and what the employer can hold the employee to. One statement is often that, the only thing worse than not having a employee handbook is having an employee handbook and not following it, right? So whatever you have here, and this is, again, AI is going to spit out something. It's going to spit out what it thinks you want. If you take that at face value and sign it and use it, you need to know if you can actually live up to that, because you've now created a document that employees are relying on and that you may rely on later, right? A great example of that may be, for example, your discrimination policy, right? Mm-hmm. So there are legal protected classes. You cannot discriminate on this, or this. Well, you can have a policy that has a higher level of protection, right? You can say, I'm not going to discriminate based on self-identifying gender identity, right? Or I'm not going to discriminate on this, other things out there. So you can build on top of that. But it comes back to what you can live with, what makes sense for your business. And as Madeline pointed out, at that first blush, AI doesn't know anything about your business. Now, when she goes back and puts in, include this, now it's going to think a little bit more about it. Like, let's add through the NCABC stuff. What does that change? So you want to talk about prompts and how that iteration works?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice segue into how to help the tool help you. I hear a lot of people talking about the prompt is the most important part of the process. I actually think curiosity is a more important part than anything. We are in a space where we could Google an employee handbook. We could ask another person in the industry for theirs, things like that. Or we can create our own through crafting questions and prompts with tools. I know when I was a tasting room manager, we didn't reinvent the wheel. One of my coworkers had managed a tasting room previously, and we collaborated on things she knew that needed to be in it, and we were able to update that versus starting it from scratch. So we're not in a space where I assume anyone's taken out their typewriter and typing these SOPs by scratch. What we want you to do is we want you to have these documents. We want them to work for you and your business. And we want them to make your staff feel excited and empowered because all of that is outlined for them. So prompt is important, but I find curiosity about how it came up with the responses or how it justifies its actions is also very helpful. Now, we don't want to go through this line by line necessarily. We just wanted to give you an opportunity to see how it could update. So let's give it one more. John, I'll have you give me one more prompt update for this, and then we'll switch to our next platform. So we added that you're in North Carolina. What's one more detail you could give it that you think would make a positive impact in what North Carolina or breweries specifically might need?
Good question. Let's just go with North Carolina and Ooh, no, I don't want to do that one. No, I don't want to do that one. Let's go with the North Carolina ABC for shift beers and sampling during oh, this is a good one, during during business hours and offsite festivals. Because that's a great one where, like, okay, I'll give you an example here that's really bizarre, or at least a little unusual if you're not used to North Carolina. You can do a shift beer, people can sample, but they have to be clocked out. And not only do they have to be clocked out, they have to be what's called debranded. So if you're wearing a brewery t-shirt, you have to change clothes so you don't even look like a brewery employee when you have your shift beer, right? So that's the level of detail, again, that, okay, what are you asking for? What are you looking for there? Consumption on-site versus off-site. So yeah, that's this stuff that AI may not understand that you want unless you start delving into what the issues are.
So this is what it comes up with high level, consumption on-site. And so we've got a good
Employees
overview. What I'm looking for, I'm looking for that uniform component.
Where after shifts, employees consuming alcohol less.
Oh.
Okay, so I would see that where under number 2, the last bullet point, employees consuming alcohol after hours must remain respectful. Yes, all that stuff. This would be one that, gosh, maybe AI hasn't picked up on yet. Or you might need a professional to go, and you have to do this, right? And so that's the one I'm still missing there for that debranding or changing of uniform.
Yeah.
But overall, the stuff I'm seeing there looks great. I love the no open containers in production areas. I don't think that's
an interesting one.
doable. I mean, I don't know anybody without a beer. Zero tolerance for impairment. That's a great example of it's going to spit something out. Is that what you want? Right? Because that zero tolerance for impairment, does that mean that if you show up drunk, you're fired or you just at home? Right? Does that mean, and when does that mean? Does that mean if you get convicted of a DWI on your free time, that's not allowed? That's zero tolerance. So a little bit of thought has to go into this. And again, it's that iteration. And as you were saying, Madeline, nobody should be reinventing the wheel on this, right? It's about tweaking to make it fit. And a great example, I used to tell clients that, if you want to know how to do something, go see what other brewers are doing. And then if you want to know how not to do something, go see how other brewers are doing. Because just because you may have gotten this, a employment handbook from another tasting room or another brewery, doesn't mean they got it from somewhere that works either, right? Or that they did that thing. They may have done the same bit. And that's why I always start with that table of contents. Make sure that stuff's covered, and then how you cover it may be a little bit more tailored for you.
I love that at a really high level, we were able to find a couple of things right away that could use attention or could use an expert, but it does get us so much closer to having that first draft. Right. Definitely. We've got a lot of different personality types in a brewery, and the person that is responsible for brewing may be responsible for human resources and marketing and all of the things. Right. So again, we're hoping that these tools help you get those drafts and help you better ask questions when you find the right vendor. So I think we've gotten a good idea of how we could keep going with this. I'd like to toggle to our next tool. So this again was ChatGPT, and that was a free version that we were just looking at information on. The next tool that I like to use for presentations on AI is NotebookLM. This is a Google-based product. Right now, the features are free and available, but I do anticipate that as all of our software gets more AI and more integrations, we are going to see free versions of things, or we are going to see prices of things get more expensive. Sorry, guys. But NotebookLM is great because it bases its responses on information and parameters, basically, that you provide. So instead of just going out into Google or just going out into OpenAI and asking for any brewer or any employee handbook, we could provide it with maybe documents that our peers have given us or guidelines by larger organizations that can help us be better with what we're populating. So NotebookLM will allow you to do a couple of different things. You can upload different documents, links, YouTube videos. But what I'm going to do as a starting point is I noticed that the Brewers Association, when I Googled craft brewery handbook, I got to a page for an employee handbook and hiring for breweries. So NotebookLM will take a website. Shoot, let me just go right in here and drop this website in and see if it can just spit me out that great employee handbook. So it does discern things, but what's interesting about this, y'all, if you're familiar, is the handbook's not actually available. This is a link to buy the book. So again, we got information out of that, but that's not necessarily what we were looking for, right? I was almost expecting it to give me an error message saying that it wasn't able to discern much, but this is an example of a starting point.
And that's one of the things that AI generally is really, really good at, is summarizing data, right? Or summarizing information. And so I think when it doesn't know what to do, that's what it does, is it just summarizes what it sees, right?
And this is interesting here because this shouts out, I cannot generate a complete legally binding employee handbook for you. The source provides extensive information regarding sources available, but that's interesting that it had that awareness. It cannot create that legal document for us. In Googling employee handbooks for craft breweries, I did find a couple other resources on just the general interwebs. So I saw Floyd County, thank you, published your PDF. We're going to give that to NotebookLM and give that some context. And then I also found that the New York State Brewers Guild gives some additional context in best practices for the employee handbook. So I found that this is just a little bit more information than the Brewers Association gives you to kind of help sell that book. So let me add these resources. So I'm going to upload that PDF from the interwebs. So now it's got the Brewers Association website to consider for an employee handbook, and it has a published PDF of an employee to consider. I'm going to give it one more thing. I'm going to give it the New York website. And now I'm going to say, can you please generate a...
And I will say,
so now it's...
I will say, as you're typing that, one of the interesting things that I highly recommend is make sure and use please and thank you, so our robot overlords eventually know we were trying to be nice this whole time. I think that makes it.
It's so funny you say that because actually not that long ago, Sam Altman, OpenAI, came out and talked about how much energy we're using like per word, and actually being polite is pretty expensive in energy. Sorry, guys. This is not an environmental talk. I'm really sorry.
Right.
There are those components. I think it's important, but we are here to help small businesses. Yeah. Okay. So now, if you look at this bottom corner, it tells us it's only considering those three sources. It still tells us it cannot generate a completely legally binding handbook. John, you are not going to lose your job. We're good. Dude, we're good. I mean, it's got its own disclaimer right there. But a disclaimer, I mean, so that's a big stark difference right away between ChatGPT and NotebookLM is the number of disclaimers that are included in this. But it's interesting that this starts with more of a like paragraph version versus having that table of content. So there are some formatting differences. Let me see. Let's see if there's something we can kind of take a peek at high level. absences, attendance point system. Let me see if I can find.
And that's a great example of, the attendance point system is a great example of like, okay, here's a best practice. Here's how these people are doing this. Here's one way to do this. But that may be a level of complexity you're not ready for, where you're marking off, half points or points here that becomes attendance, and only when they get to 5 points, then this. You may be more of a, hey, you were late 3 times in the last 2 weeks, you're done, right? It may be much more on a less rigorous, right? But whatever you have, you need to live up to.
And with that, I think that that's a really great reminder that vendors and experts are important, because you may have preferences and thoughts for those parameters, and you may find that your state thinks otherwise, or that the way that you phrase that leaves you vulnerable for misinterpretation. I paused at general safety, and I'm sorry, I just got a chuckle out of
that's hilarious.
Not catch a falling knife. Yeah. So like, do we legally want that in our handbook, John, right, or do we need more detail than that? Right. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, some of that, I love the idea, but if you're a brewery with a tap room and not serving food, now it looks like you've got something that doesn't apply to you in that sense. But just generally about LM and these notebook models like this, it's a great opportunity, because as Madeline said, okay, it's got these 3 resources. You can give it whatever you want. This would be one that'd be like, cool, here's all the North Carolina ABC rules.
Yeah.
Write this, including this stuff, right? So you could add additional resources that are specific to you, especially if you've already got something like a mission statement, or a who we are, or how you want a cultural statement, right, that you want to embed in your employee handbook. You can give it that stuff and it will incorporate it. The other nice thing about the LM stuff is, if I understand this right, Madeline, that's a closed universe and you still own that data, right? Whereas some of the things like ChatGPT, you can upload examples of employee handbooks or agreements or whatever, but now ChatGPT has that data that now goes into its greater learning universe. So if that's something you want to keep confidential, maybe not a great idea to do that.
And you're absolutely correct, John, but I do want to manage expectations just a little bit in that I do not mean to crush anyone's world right this second, but there are not a ton of brand new ideas these days. True. So don't shoot yourself in the foot in thinking that your employee handbook is going to revolutionize the way AI learns about, let's work smarter. Let's use the tools available as well. But that is a good shout out to remember that the internet is forever, and what you submit will always be there. We are already seeing instances of police getting access to ChatGPT history or any AI history. Just because you delete a thread doesn't mean it is gone. Sorry.
Yeah.
One more thing in this notebook LM, and then we're going to have some fun going into something that helps you engineer your prompt more intentionally. One thing I like about Notebook LM, in addition to its ability to populate, you can also choose how the information is displayed. So again, we have lots of different personality types in a brewery, different personality types in front of house, back of house, different learning styles and preferences. You may find that this is a tool that helps you present the information in a way that your audience is most likely to understand and leverage it. You may find someone that would like to have this displayed to them in an audio overview, like a podcast. We might want this to be a mind map so that we can create it into an exercise that the team can do together. Maybe it's not just giving someone an employee handbook, asking them to read it on their own and sign at the end. Maybe there are quizzes that you can populate out of it, because you find that if there's accountability for reading, that you have better understanding of the processes. So this is a wonderful tool I actually learned about in the education space, because teachers are fearful of AI, but this is a way that we can repopulate information to help our students and help our audiences. So I think that that's really exciting about AI as well, is we can iterate tasks and ideas in ways that are better understood by other people.
I mean, and I could understand, and branching off into different things outside of the employee handbook, this is, again, a great way of doing things, maybe either cheaper, faster, or better, depending on how you approach this. Is you could do this with your SOPs, right?
Yes.
You throw all your SOPs in here, your employee handbook, and tell it to create a training slide deck or a training program for how to train new employees or onboarding. Instead of, you as an owner or, front of house manager or something, spending 2 or 3 hours writing that, it'll at least give you a draft that you can then spend 20 or 30 minutes adjusting so that it's right. So this is just one way to kind of just show the tools, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. We're keeping an eye out for questions. I love questions if anybody has anything, or if anybody has any insights or any thoughts about that. Any other thoughts about NotebookLM before we jumped to the next AI tool that we're going to chat about?
The only thing I'll say is that whether it's NotebookLM or a notebook style, where you have a fixed set of resources, or an open AI style where it's looking at everything that ever was, find what's going to work for you in your situation. The other thing, and Madeline, I appreciate if you'd comment on this. One of the things I had heard, and I haven't done a lot of comparisons, is that some AI models are better at certain things than others, right? So I'm hearing, for example, if you want to create artwork, a particular AI model may be better for generative graphics than another one, whereas maybe ChatGPT is really good at text and written words, but maybe not as good at artwork or creative stuff, or creating multimedia may be different maybe better with somebody else. So it depends on kind of what you're trying to do, as well as what the backbone of that is.
I would love to take this opportunity to pull it back to curiosity, because all of those tools can only be so impactful if you don't understand your audience or your target market. We could create incredible things through AI and it's still not land because we are not communicating where we should be or who we should be talking to. So another place that you could be curious is in some self-awareness. What are customers in my area looking for? What are the demographics? How could I change my content or adjust my approach to better meet those customers where they are? I think that we could do some self-reflection and get some insight into why we're creating what we are in AI, instead of the new doom scroll of just iterating strategy in AI. I don't want you all to go after this and spend 4 hours creating all your SOPs and then they sit in a folder on your desk, right? These things only matter if we do something with them. So I'm hoping, again, that you use this to vet what you want to do next, and then trust the experts and things like that. But before we go on to the next one, I do want to call out, so this is NotebookLM. We didn't specify North Carolina in this one, but I did notice this rules for off-the-clock consumption participation in events. There's nothing about apparel in that as well. So in both of these AIs now, there has been vulnerability in making sure that it's clear that you cannot consume alcohol with your branded stuff on. Cool. Okay. So the next tool that we're going to go to is a prompt generator. Just like it says, it turn your lazy prompts into great ones. So before, I would brain dump into ChatGPT. And again, I've been using it for a long time. So I'm at a point where I can say, I need to create an employee handbook for a brewery. I want to make sure that I acknowledge alcohol consumption, THC consumption, and I want to make sure that I don't have any vulnerabilities as a business owner. What I find now is when I'm training people on using a new AI tool, Draft Cowboy is really helpful, because you can brain dump, you can just kind of put your lazy prompts into here and it will reformat it in a way that your preferred AI platform will get a little bit closer to what it is you have in mind. So we've talked about a couple of different things. Do you want me to add anything to this before I press enter, John? I want to create an employee handbook for a brewery in North Carolina. I want the handbook to consider local and state regulations that should be included to protect my business.
No, I'd stick with that, because since you turned me on to Prompt Cowboy, I have absolutely loved this platform. It is so cool. because it'll give you, it's going to take this, okay, here's my lazy prompt, here's the great prompt. And even if that great prompt is not right, it's starting to fill in things where I can look at that and go, oh, I forgot to ask about that. Okay, no, I need to put that back in there. It'll give you so much more, it's so much more fleshed out for the things that maybe I'm too close to the trees to figure out, or I'm 30,000 feet away and I need to know how many leaves are on the branch. It gives you a much better idea of what kinds of things your AI is looking for as to what levers it's going to pull to get you what you want.
And if you've been using your AI for a really long time, you might not need this. Again, our profiles start to acclimate to our preferences and our styles. We can actually update settings now and a lot of these AI things. So my personal ChatGPT, it shows me code while it's thinking, because I love that. I do all kinds of nerdy stuff with it. It sends me tasks, it sends me reminders. But anyway, if you're newer to AI, or if you don't feel as confident in what you've been getting as results, Prompt Cowboy is a really great tool. I love the improved your prompts. Do you have an existing handbook? Is that something you can upload? What brewery size and structure? What a great question. We've not talked at all about how many people work with us. We haven't talked at all about what our space is like. Maybe we have more than one location. So this also reminds us that the AI does not have that context. We can improve the prompt by giving it more information. How many employees and what are your key policy concerns? That's really interesting, John. We haven't even talked about that as an approach. Here are my concerns before, and that's what I write my handbook around. So I think that those are really great questions to ask. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. What I do want to point out in this is that it's still one really long prompt. In my personal experience, I like asking a question at a time. I like doing things a thing at a time when I'm talking to AI. I do think it's interesting that Prompt Cowboy keeps it all in one thing, but it has to for semantics. It does tell you what a great prompt includes, though, right? A great prompt includes a situation. It includes a task. It includes an objective. It includes knowledge base. That's the context. And it actually gave it some sections that it wants us to have. So this is fascinating. This is the first time I've noticed this. Every other time I've used Prompt Cowboy up to now, the last prompt has said, assume your life depends on, and it took that prompt out.
I've seen that a lot, especially asking for something legal. Your life depends on a legally enforceable employment agreement or something like that. Yeah.
It didn't do that here. That's very interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go back to chat. I'm going to start a new chat, and I'm going to press paste. Now we can see the differences between what ChatGPT gives us. And I can see it's flashing at me that it's searching employment laws. So I'm going to pause right there while it's still populating. That's a great reminder for me that laws change as well. Policies evolve, different things change. So I may draft this and get it in really good shape, ready for review. John, how often do I need to review documents that I populate with AI, even if they have been approved by you at some point?
Well, I'd say best practices is probably once a year. I don't know that anybody does that, because again, I think about AI like I think about the internet, right? It is a tool. AI does not order beers. It does not put butts in seats. It does not make beer for you. The internet doesn't do any of those things either. It may market something for you, but it's not what you do for your business. So it is just a tool. That would be a great way to use AI, would be, on some regular basis, upload again all these documents and say, do any of these need to be updated based on any changes in laws between this date and this date, right? Because the AI, again, is really good at analyzing data.
Question. So is this but I'm trusting that it's pulling the right regulations in that sense. So do I need to copy and paste any legal updates before I ask that question? Or what do you think the best way to make sure that it's appropriately researching the laws are?
Right. So again, it's about the prompts, right? So that would be one where either go to something like Prompt Cowboy or build out a prompt. What is it you're looking for, right? So if you're looking at, here's my employment handbook, here's my SOPs, here's, here's my operating, whatever you want it to look at, what are you looking at it for, right? So tell AI at that point, review this, summarize these documents, and identify if any changes need to be made based on changes in the law in my state from this time to this time. So, it knows what to go look for and then compare to what you've got.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I am happy to see, friends, that this ChatGPT has said it is important reminder. This is a template. John, you're good, man. I'm so excited for you. You should have your attorney review it and tailor it to your local city company size. So,
and this is maybe a really good time to talk about that. If you don't mind, I'm going to take us a little bit on a tangent here, because I just had a chance to talk to some first and second year law students like last Thursday. And a lot of people were asking me, hey, is AI just going to put us out of a job, right? Is it just going to replace lawyers? And I said, well, no, but it is going to change what lawyers do. And so what I see with this, and I would tell any of my clients to go do this, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. If you want to hire me to write your employee handbook, I will happily take your money, right? But where I can actually provide value is not sitting there typing this out, but going back and going, oh, but you forgot about this. Oh, don't forget about this. We need to include something around this, because the value I can bring is I know your industry and your business because I've got a relationship with you probably better than ChatGPT does. And I've got a little bit better insight into the rules for my state that may not even be really well written, right? That, well, the rule says this, but here's how ABC is interpreting it, right? So that's the value. And instead of paying me, 4 hours of my time to write this thing for you, if you go do this and come to me and say, hey, I've done this work, I've spent some time, I think this is where this needs to be, and I've, spent some time and figured out this is what I can live with, I can then spend like 30 minutes instead of 4 hours going, here are the things that are different. Here's what I want you to include in that. Here's where I can add value, rather than copying and pasting some information. Now, on the flip side of that, and I think Madeline's gonna echo this, is don't just go to ChatGPT or AI, get it to spit this out and then say, here, John, review this. Because that's still going to take me more time. I'm not typing all this, but if you haven't done the review of what it makes sense for your business, I have to make a pass at that. So you've got to spend some time figuring that out for you.
I love that call out. I think it is going back to that self-awareness. It's important to know what we know. It's important to explore what we don't know. So I'm going to give it one more question, actually. So it wants me to have a lawyer look at it. What questions should I ask my lawyer when I present this? How could I become a more informed business owner? Let's see what it says. That's a very smart question. See, it's just, I don't mind that it's nice. I do like more direct, but, oh, I love that. Does this handbook fully comply with current North Carolina and federal employment laws? Does the at-will employment disclaimer provide sufficient protection? So it's, to John, to your point, it's not just download this, press send. It's have curiosity, have intention, see where there are opportunities to, really have your attention and your audience, John. I don't want you to just skim over this. I want your insight in your time.
Well, and it already called out, I love that one right there. Have I correctly defined exempt and non-exempt employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act? And between that and 1099 employees, that's one I absolutely hammer on with folks. So, yes, this is a great set of questions to go, okay, what do I ask my lawyer? Or better yet, hey, John, this is what I'm concerned about. Tell me more about that.
Got some good ABC things, some OSHA stuff in there. That's good. Anti-discrimination, you brought that one up earlier. So I think that's good. Wage and hourly. I was curious to see what it recommends for, gosh, wow, it had a lot of feedback. How to be a more informed brewery owner, stay educated on those regulations, build a compliance calendar.
Woo.
I like that. Document everything. develop trusted advisors, foster a culture of compliance. So what's great about this too is I can keep asking questions. I can say, okay, how should I document everything? Or what
What's a compliance
formats?
calendar?
Yeah, right. There you go. But I also find that AI is typically going to keep you going, right? I think it likes when we stay on the platform too. Would you like me to create a legal checklist overview? So I love that it keeps you going and keeps you thinking. But again, this is a tool. It doesn't do the work for you. At some point, we got to log out, submit for review, right? At some point, we got to say, this is good. We got to implement it. And now the accountability and supportive accountability become important. Just for fun, I did generate a craft beer employee handbook into my own ChatGPT. And the real reason I'm showing it to you is I think it's really funny that one of the first things it calls out here at the top is social media policy. It goes right into having a social media policy, which is pretty on the nose for things that I work in. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, and this is, again, when we're talking about AI, it's learning from you as well as everything else. Mm-hmm. So, I would guess, Madeline, prior to us talking about this, you hadn't done a hell of a lot with employee handbooks.
No, more standard operating procedures, SOPs and things like that. I've only written one handbook for myself in the beer space, and that was before AI.
Well, and what I'm thinking about is, all I've basically used my AI accounts for are doing legally stuff, right? Help me find this case, help me find information, help me draft this, help me, write up that. If I then go and say, oh, completely different now, help me write a best man speech for a wedding, it's going to give me a slightly skewed version because all it's learned from me has been legal stuff, right? So you have to, understand what it's trying to learn from you while you're trying to get answers from it.
And I can see myself in a lot of this because I typically take a very employee-focused, holistic, galvanizing approach. And it's, every batch counts. We're more than a brewery. We're a gathering place. This is definitely more something that I would populate. Whereas this is much more straight to the point, document focused. So that's pretty funny.
So don't use anybody else's AI account either.
Or, review with caution and again, have that curiosity. So I will take this opportunity to remind you that you can do this with any vendor as well. So once I think we need to start with our documents, our SOPs, our handbooks and things like that. Going into 2026, there's no excuse for us not to have standard operating procedures documented. There's no excuse not to have an employee handbook. Once we've got those things and we understand our mission and our culture and all of that stuff, and we're ready to start talking about it, advertising it, marketing it, go back to AI with that same curiosity. Okay, now that I've developed my culture and who I'm bringing in to work with me, how do I invite my community in? I mentioned earlier, you can look for data on local demographics, but you can also ask, what are ways I can showcase this culture that I've built? What are out of the box marketing strategies that I haven't thought of yet? There are lots of conversations you can have. And then when you are talking to an expert, you're having a more intentional conversation. It's not, I'm a brewery that needs marketing. It's, I'm a brewery that would like to see more foot traffic. And after doing some research, I think an email marketing campaign would help me get people to come back in. Can you help me develop an email marketing strategy? Versus just saying, again, I need marketing help. Do you need to go to off-premise networking events and personally invite your community in? Do you need to do a paid ad strategy? And you might not be able to afford all of those things. So similar to working with John, how can we take an hour's worth of research and present it so that it's only 20 minutes of our vendor's time? How can we get closer to having these intentional conversations so that everybody makes money and everyone is set up for success?
Well, and like I said, it's such an amazing tool because even just in the short time we've looked at this, what could have taken, even if you say, to hell with it, I can do it myself. I don't need a lawyer. I'm going to do my own employee handbook, just as an example. The time it would take you to go find these resources, put it into your own format, retype things, reread that, redo things. You're looking at 2 or 3 hours. right? If you went to do this from whole cloth, an AI, literally will take that down to under an hour of doing, decent work, right? So it is a really powerful tool. And to Madeline's point, you could use it for other things. Keep in mind what AI doesn't know, because that's a great example of, okay, I want more foot traffic. I want to attract, customers between the ages of 22 and 29 because I'm a mile from the local university. Maybe Facebook isn't the right place to do a campaign on because those people aren't on Facebook, right? So it's the stuff that it doesn't know that somebody like Madeline, somebody like me, or you, if you understand this stuff enough, that's the value of you having to iterate on this stuff and you getting involved and that curiosity of how did we get to this?
We're coming up on time, and I'm going to ask you one more question that I didn't prompt you with in advance. So sorry to put you on the spot, but something I like to tell people to do in the marketing space is if you see your competitor is doing something well, take a screenshot, give it to AI, and ask questions about it. Are we at risk of anything that we submit to AI? What if I have an employee handbook from my last boss and submit that? Are there things we need to be worried about giving that could come back and bite us in the butt?
So the answer is yes, right? Unless you are working in a closed like notebook environment where it's all still your data and the data doesn't go out to the interwebs and is owned by Chat or whoever at that point. Because the examples that I think about that I'd be like, ooh, do we really want to do that? I was talking to somebody who through Prompt Cowboy and something else is using ChatGPT to act as their CFO, right? So he says, here's all my financial information. Tell me about this, my financials, do my projections for me, pretend you're a CFO and analyze, this, that, or the other, cost of goods sold. I'm like, cool. You realize that just got uploaded to somewhere somebody else could find it, right? And maybe you're concerned about that, maybe you're not. Things like, recipes, I often tell people recipes, I don't worry about protecting recipes because it's not the recipe that you're protecting, it's the talent to build that recipe that's worth protecting. But is there stuff you don't want somebody to find out about or know about? So, for example, I would not ever want to write into something like an AI, hey, on this day, I embezzled $3,000 from the company. What's my best way to hide this money or launder it so it doesn't look like it? No, you've just made an admission that's discoverable somehow, right?
Even how to embezzle is incriminating. Like,
not a great one. Yeah. So, think about that in terms of where the information goes, especially when you're uploading something. Because to your point, Madeline, what if you are subject to a non-disclosure agreement from a previous job, right? And you go, oh, I used to work at John's Brewery. Hey, ChatGPT, here's John's Brewery's marketing and plan and here's their customer list. Tell me who I should go, email directly about my new brewery. Yes, that could probably land you in trouble. Is the risk high? John's probably not going to come after you for that. But if you piss somebody off enough, they're going to, you could wind up in problems.
And I think the other reason I bring it up is that we should remember that other people are doing that. Even if you are not using AI, if you're not comfortable with it, remember that your competitors are. So it's also really valuable to be informed and understand the mechanics. If you're someone that is hesitant to use it and you have staff that really wants you to, and you were wondering if we were going to talk you out of it today, there is value in finding things that energize your team. There's value in streamlining and saving time. And there's value in self-awareness that other people are doing it. So it would be silly to fall behind in understanding the mechanics.
Yeah. And I know we're running tight on time. I want to give you an anecdote that I had like a month and a half ago. I was at a conference and I saw this Breweries t-shirt. And I thought, that's a really cool t-shirt. It was very clearly like calling on Lord of the Rings kind of thing. And I'm like, that's really cool. How'd you do that? And he said, oh, had AI generate this for me. I'm like, what, that may be like copyright or trademark infringement, right? And like, yeah, I'll worry about that when they send a cease and desist. I'm like, okay, that's your decision. But here's the thing, going back to be careful what you upload, because if you had said, here's some Tolkien material, or design me a t-shirt or can label that looks like Lord of the Rings, congratulations, they can just prove intentional infringement instead of accidental infringement, right? So, it's just, be careful about that stuff. It's a tool like any, like a lawnmower. It's got sharp moving parts too. So be careful.
You're not wrong. Yeah. Yeah. And educate your staff as well, because some of these mistakes were not made with malicious intent, but you are responsible for your staff's behavior when they're on the clock using your AI as well. So awareness is important. Education is important. Curiosity is important. And you're not alone, right? There are resources available. There are people that can help you navigate these things. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to be excited about ways to leverage AI in the brewery.
Absolutely. I haven't seen any other questions or comments. One of the great things, obviously, about Craft Beer Professionals, this will be all available online afterwards. I think it goes up on the YouTube page. Madeline, do you want to give out your contact information in case folks want to get to you?
I was just going to say, yeah, I was going to prompt you with that as well. So I am really easy to find on LinkedIn, Madeline R. McMahon. And my Instagram is Madeline Regina Celeste. It's a little more local these days than beer, but that's how I got my initial introduction. And I love talking about AI. I volunteer my time to teach small businesses how to do this kind of stuff. If you're of any interest, I would love to set up a virtual chat with y'all, probably at any time. So Madeline@beerpaysthebills.com. John, how do we find you?
Well, email's super easy. It's john@beerlawcenter.com. We're on most of the socials at Beer Law Center. That'll be us. Website, beerlawcenter.com. Interestingly enough, there is a blog article already out there with a table of contents and what should be in your employee handbook. So if you want to just copy that into chat, that's fine too. But yeah, anytime, even if I can't help you, I'll help you find somebody who can.
John, you should repost that to your LinkedIn for social content after this talk, because that would be a really good lead generator to get people to call you.
Can do.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for doing this with me, John. John and I connected at a CBP Connects in North Carolina, and we got to nerding out about this, and we submitted for the virtual conference, and Andrew thought we could do something that was standalone. So we appreciate your faith in us, Andrew, and we hope we hope you learned something in this process. And if not,
if you didn't like it, keep that to yourself.
Right? Who asked you?
Yeah.
You probably don't like Tuesdays either.
Right. Well, again, thank you so much, Madeline. I appreciate it. And again, thanks to Craft Beer Professionals. We'll see you all around. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this session, we'd love to see you in real life. We host in-person workshops across the country for craft beer professionals just like you that are held in some of the most exciting beer destinations around. These immersive events are designed to help you grow and connect with others. You'll meet peers from across the country and leave with actionable strategies for success. Connection has never been more important, and you can learn more at cbpconnects.com. Cheers. See you there.